The tiger, the wizard, and the audacity of Kelsey.
Yeah. Welcome to the Less Than a Day podcast. Don't ask us to explain the name. We're not going to. I'm Kay.
I'm Kiko.
And we're here to talk about books, movies, TV shows, geeky things. Huge spoiler warning for specifically the only thing we're going to talk about today, which is a book series, but maybe for every other media that we connect to. So as per usual, huge spoilers for every piece of media ever created. Today we have a special guest with us. You may have heard him in our previous episode if you're a dedicated fan like that. Ani, welcome back to the studio.
It's great to be back.
Is it?
I mean, it is. This is just a place for me to gab about things that I care about gabbing about.
Excellent.
Hey, community.
Shut up, bro. Just shut up. We're not going to do our current events today. We're just going to jump right into the main topic. So to introduce a little bit, about 10-ish years ago, everybody in our friend circle was obsessed with this book series called Tiger's Curse.
By Colleen
Hook, something like that. And this book at the time was revolutionary. At this point, I bet pretty much nobody's heard of it because it's pretty old at this point, and it's kind of obscure. But this was very important to us back in the day. So Tiger's Curse is an Indian-inspired fantasy YA book. And we asked you, Ani, to read it, to give some of your qualifications, because I think you are the person, in my life at least, that I know who is the biggest expert in all things Indian mythology, culture, history.
I don't know about expert. I would say, like, I had phases where I just deep dive.
Well, you're definitely the history expert that I know, but you've taught classes, right, about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sure, as in, like, I was a student teacher, but I don't, disclaimer, if I say anything that's wrong and, like, blatantly wrong, like, I get years or, like, facts wrong, please understand that I am operating off of, like, some of this is, like, 6th grade, 5th grade knowledge, like, that I may misremember. Maybe I'm going to try to be as factual and objective as I can when fact-checking the book, but for the most part, please, disclaimer warning, don't hold me. Don't at me.
So, a little bit more background. Kiko, I don't know about you, but at the time when this released, I was so excited because it's very rare to see Indian-inspired mythology tied anything. And there's reasons for that, good reasons. But at the time, this was like a big deal, especially for like an avid book reader. You don't see this usually. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, if you were excited about that or not.
I didn't read it when it was released. I think I read it in middle school. I don't remember.
It was released around 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
that was
I
think around the time.
The cover's really pretty. I like tigers. So I saw it. I'm like, interesting. This looks interesting. And then I read it and I was like, finally, the day has come. The era has come. This will change my life.
Yeah,
It did. It sure did.
For years, I mean, we read and reread these books, right? It was one of my favorites for a very long time until I got a little bit older and I reflected a little bit. And there's some concerning themes that I notice.
Yeah, I reread it like 2 or 3 times. And then I forgot about it for a while. And then it was brought up semi-recently. And I remembered it again and did some thinking.
Did some
reflecting.
So for a little bit of context on that front, this book was written by an American who is not familiar with Indian culture or mythology.
I wouldn't say that she's not with
By
it.
her own admission, she has
no
not
qualification.
been to India. She's never been to India, and she had to do a lot of Googling.
Yeah, so like in the end of all of the books, in her acknowledgements, Colleen basically says that her main fact-checking was, I think, her, like, an editor or someone that she sent it to, like this one lady named Shushmita, I believe, that she basically sent everything to, and She was the one who fact checked it.
Yeah, so before we get too into it, I think let's do a summary. Now, I skimmed through the books. I couldn't put myself through reading them again because that was painful.
Oh, her name is Sudha Sheshadri.
Okay, shout out to Sudha. And Kiko, you haven't reread it at all, right?
No, this is like 3 different perspectives here. We have sort of like an older perspective that remembers some stuff and has reviewed some stuff. We have a perspective that's fresh. And then we have a perspective that doesn't remember anything at all. And that's me.
Vibes only, baby.
Vibes only.
So I will give a brief plot summary, and Ani cut in and fill in details that I'm missing or misremembering or saying wrong. Like I said, this isn't a hugely popular series, so I did struggle a lot to find condensed summaries. So a lot of this is from me skimming and then going back and filling in the details.
Combing through internet blogs for a plot summary is crazy.
Summary.
And hey, I finished reading it like an hour ago.
Yeah, well, you're bright and fresh. Kelsey is an 18-year-old girl from Oregon who finds a summer internship with a circus. She finds herself strangely drawn to a white tiger named Ren and spends a lot of time with him. When the tiger is bought by a businessman named Mr. Kadam, I think it is, right? Kelsey is offered a job to help relocate Ren to India, which she accepts. While in India, Kelsey learns that Ren is actually an Indian prince who was cursed 300 years ago to be transformed into a tiger. Kelsey was somehow able to break part of the curse, and Ren can become human for 24 minutes of the day. She agrees to help break Ren's curse, and they set off to find the goddess Durga's prophecy. Along the way, Kelsey meets Kishan, Ren's younger brother, who was also cursed to be a tiger. Kishan tells her about how back in the day he was in love with Ren's fiance, and it was his fiance's father that tricked and cursed the 2 brothers because he wanted halves of an amulet that they had, which I believe would have granted him immortality. Kishan agreed.
Like immense power.
Yeah, Kishan agreed to give it over because he didn't really believe in the amulet, but Ren was like, nah, and so he was captured and they were cursed. So they part ways, and Ren and Kelsey go after the prophecy, and they meet with the goddess Durga, and they are redirected to Kishkinda, where they discover a magical artifact called a golden fruit. So Durga essentially tells them, if you want to break this curse, you have to find these 4 magical artifacts that belong to me and give them to me as like an offering. So they find the first one, which is the fruit, and it makes infinite food. The first part of Ren's curse is broken. I believe he can be human for like
6 hours.
6 hours a day. And then Kelsey gets supremely insecure because over the course of the book, they're falling in love. And she realizes, well, he's this immensely like attractive Indian prince.
They very in detail explain how attractive he
He's
is.
so, she calls him like a gold Adonis and stuff. And she gets insecure. She's like, you haven't been human for 300 years. You can't get tied down to the first person that you've met. There's definitely people better than me. Go find them. Which honestly, props to her for recognizing, well, it would kind of suck to be stuck to the first person that you met. Like, here's freedom. Go enjoy your freedom. So she goes back to Oregon and leaves Ren in India. They break up. So that jumps into the second book. Kelsey returns back to Oregon. She tries to forget Ren. She dates around. She starts her college life. She learns like martial arts and stuff. Wushu. Yeah. But eventually Ren can't take it and like flies to Oregon.
Literally like shows up on her doorstep. Buys the house, like the duplex right next to hers.
Yeah. Which is interesting behavior.
I mean, also, just like a note, the duplex that she moves into, she used to live with these foster parents because her parents died in a drunk car crash, right? As they would.
As they should.
And did she have a sibling? I feel like she might have said a sister.
Let me
I
see.
don't think so.
Okay, maybe I'm confusing this with something else.
I can check.
But basically, her parents died in a drunk car crash, so she lives with her family friends whose parents are like, huh?
She does not have a sister.
Okay, never mind. Who are like uber healthy, vegan. That's like, that's significant in the first book. Anyway, basically, she's not rich. This is why she does the summer internship at a circus.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, apparently I don't know who it is, like the guy who runs the circus sounds like Mario, because he'll be like, it's the me. Like, and I'll be like,
we need to talk about like the accents, especially book 3.
Oh my God.
How old is she?
She's 18.
18 in the first book, and she
start
turns
college.
Yeah, she turns 19
in book 2. Okay. Anyway, so She's not rich in
Yeah.
any shape or form, but she works for Mr. Kadam and Ren for this whole mission escapade, Indiana Jones herself
Yeah.
throughout India. And Mr. Kadam and Ren, who are immensely rich because even though Ren's been like a sort of like a tiger here and there for the last 300 years, Mr. Kadam hasn't. And so he's been able to use some capital to start a business, make like a multi-million, even maybe $billion like company. That has like ties,
Basically,
geopolitical ties around the world.
He does what the Cullens should have.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, so they just have like an unlimited supply of money, and they just buy her a duplex and a sports car and just enroll her in like university and pay for everything for her. So she just comes back to an entire new separate life, and then suddenly Ren just buys the duplex right next to hers, which was already bought.
Of course he does.
For her.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving a Korean CEO.
Giving marry my husband.
Yeah, so he turns up. She rejects him initially. She's like, I don't want to date you. But, he sticks around. Classic Bollywood trope. Follows her around. And eventually
Stalker's trope.
Yeah. Eventually she gives in. They're like, okay, we're meant to be together. And so it's a lot of them just like dating. And then eventually, I don't remember what the context is. I think she almost gets hit by a car or something. And her picture ends up in a news article.
She's helping an old woman who's about to get hit by a car, and she doesn't get majorly injured, but her picture ends up in the newspaper. And the issue is the big bad who's been trying to track them this whole time because he got a vision because he has a piece of the amulet. The big bad being Ren's fiance's dad.
The guy who cursed them, yeah.
Yes. And Kelsey gets a piece of the amulet because Kishan, Ren's brother, gives her a piece. Yeah. Her, Mr. Kadam, and Lokesh have a three-way conference call vision where they see each other. And so he knows her face and has been trying to track her, and they've been trying to keep her on the DL. But then her ass had to just be a good Samaritan and help some party across the side of the road. And
let her die. She was
didn't have much longer left. Yeah, so they realize that she can be tracked. So Kishan flies in from India to hang out with them for reasons, and they're like on the beach eating ice cream, and then all of a sudden they get attacked, and Ren buys them time and gets captured. So Kelsey and Kishan head back to India, and they're like, okay, we're gonna break the second part of this curse, right? So they go to Shangri-La.
Wait, so why didn't they break that second part earlier?
They need to interpret the prophecies.
So there's four parts of the prophecy. There are parts of the prophecy, and there are four gifts or like Durga's treasures, right? And they have to get each one of those things, and each one basically unlocks like 6 hours. You know when you're playing like Legend of Zelda or something and you get like the hearts?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Okay. Yeah. So they go to break the second part of the curse. They go to Shangri-La. And while they're traveling, Kishan admits that he's interested in Kelsey. And she basically is like, nah, bro, I'm with your brother. This isn't happening. But I like you as a friend. Let's be friends.
I mean, like, honestly, in any book, like, why do they always admit, like, when they're dating, usually the brother?
Yeah.
Why do they have to admit that? Just let them, oh my gosh.
I have feelings about that, yeah. So they find the object, and then they go to rescue Ren. And then the second object is like the divine weaver's scarf, right? So it lets them make clothes, but then it also lets them like disguise each other as different things.
You tell them what the golden fruit is. The golden fruit is like you think of something and like the food appears.
It's like, I feel like in something there's like this cornucopia.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. So I think she disguises herself as Kishan, and she goes in to save Ren. And then they realize that Ren is acting super weird. Well, it turns out that he has had all the memories of Kelsey removed from his brain. He still remembers like going to Oregon. He remembers like meeting Kishan. He remembers like breaking out of the circus and stuff. He just doesn't remember Kelsey, and for some reason, whenever he touches her, it causes like a PTSD response, and so he's physically repulsed by her. And so there's this honestly kind of heartbreaking scenes where all the little inside things that they had when they were dating, he doesn't remember, and so he's continuously breaking her heart over and over again by not remembering.
And for some reason, he remembers literally everything. Like he goes to Oregon, and he remembers going to Oregon because he was enrolled in college there. Yeah. He remembers fighting with Lee. He's like warped.
Yeah. So she has like this heart to heart. So she has like a heart to heart with Mr. Cunham. He's like, you need to let Ren go because you're just hurting him. He doesn't understand why he's hurting you. You're just getting hurt, and you're clipping his freedom. by forcing him to try to remember you, and he clearly can't. So they break up, and Kishan takes this as like a... Initially, he's like, okay, you clearly still love my brother. We're not going to talk about this. The third book starts, and they're going after this pearl necklace this time. At the start of the book, Ren is slowly starting to re-fall in love with Kelsey because he fell in love with her once, so she hasn't changed, so he's starting to. But he's having a rough time with the physical touch part because every time they touch, every time they touch, he's like physically...
He gets a feeling. It's just not a good feeling.
Yeah, no, he feels like in pain. So there's like a couple romantic scenes. He's clearly falling in love with her again. And then they meet. They're trying to learn. They know that the necklace is underwater and it's guarded by 5 Chinese dragons. Or like the 5 Chinese dragons are guiding them in some way. They have to meet 5 dragons. And so they know that they have to go in the water, and Kelsey's afraid of sharks or whatever. Who cares? But they meet this scuba instructor from Texas. I remember. Who has the worst Southern accent I've ever read.
What's his name? Like
It's like Wes or something.
I thought his name was Ames.
And as per usual, every character in this series has to fall in love with Kelsey, so he has an interest in her.
Yeah, and then he like leaves his girlfriend or something who's literally like engaged. Or something, I forget.
Yeah.
But like...
and no, it's atrocious. It's atrocious. It's clearly the approximation of what somebody from Oregon thinks somebody from Texas
Say howdy,
talks
y'all.
about. Honestly, there's some cultural appropriation in this book, but the worst of it
American cultural appropriation.
is the Texan appropriation.
The
it's so
weirdest
bad.
part
It's
is that
so
they
bad.
never do any Indian accent type thing, except here and there. But the way the Italian and Texan accent, they completely like...
So borderline racist. It's really bad. And blah, blah, blah. There's this part where Kelsey drowns, basically, and they have to do CPR, and Ren is trying to do CPR on her. But
right, what she says literally, right you are, and I expect y'all to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed up at dawn.
No, never in my life have I ever heard someone say bright-eyed and bushy.
he's just like from like Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this part where Kelsey is drowning. They need to do CPR, and Ren tries to do CPR on her, but he, like every time he touches her, he's like having this reaction.
So he literally just gives her
he
to
can't.
his brother, like
And-
she's an object to
but-
be won.
but-
Appropriate thing.
But no. The really stupid thing is, so he can't do the CPR. So Kishan tries to do it, and he gets jealous, and is initially tries to stop him, and then realizes, oh wait, no, she's dying. Do the CPR.
The fact that he had to have that realized.
I know.
Shouldn't have been a realize. It should
I know.
have been there.
But then he breaks up with her. He's like, I can't touch you. This is a problem. You are gonna get hurt. And she's like, you have been jerking me around. If you break up with me here, we're done. I am not giving you another chance. And he's like, good, I don't want one. And so they start fighting again. Oh my God, there's so much beefing in this book, guys.
It's funny because it's in India.
Yeah.
I know. And so they go find out eventually that Ren did the mind block to himself. They meet Durga again before they go off to the next part. And she like removes the mind block. So it turns out he was trying to protect Kelsey because Lokesh was trying to find out where she was. He didn't want it, so he made a deal with Durga, and he's like, take away my memories. But this doesn't come out till later because in the meantime, Kelsey starts dating Kishan because
I love how there's no break. No break.
well, they try to justify it, but like, oh, there's a prophecy that she could date either one of the tigers, and
Because
they'll
she's
be like
gonna
her
have
soulmate.
They're also
Yeah,
like,
but,
there's a
does she
prophecy
have
that Kishan has a dream, and she also has this dream later that she has one of their kids.
Yeah.
And it's not very clear like whose
Which
kid
one?
it is because the kid doesn't open according to the dream, the kid doesn't open the eyes.
yeah.
So if it has blue eyes, it's Ren's, and if it has golden eyes, it's Kishan's.
So she knows that like one of these two brothers is gonna be her soulmate technically. So she starts dating him, and she's making out with him when Ren walks in, and that's when the spell ends, and he like remembers her because Toxic Boy Ren made the trigger for the spell ending that Kishan would be kissing Kelsey.
So fun for that.
Because he was like,
That's just setting him up.
he's like, I
setting himself
know,
up for failure.
I know my brother is gonna immediately start making out with her the second I'm gone. So that's the trigger. And so it's just, oh my God, it's such a mess. He's like, I remember you. I'm your boyfriend. We're meant to be together. I love you. She's like, you said you didn't want another chance, motherfucker. We're done. It's such a mess. Oh my God.
Ooh, and
So
then she gets
messy.
kidnapped.
They find the pearl necklace. It's so irrelevant. They meet the 5 dragons. So irrelevant. And then she
The
gets
pearl
kidnapped.
necklace gives her like water powers or something.
Yeah, it lets her control water.
I thought she only had like lightning power.
Well,
No,
yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
She-
Thank you for reminding me. She randomly has lightning powers in
And
this book.
fire kind of something.
So yeah, she has lightning powers and fire powers for some reason. So she, at the end of the book, Lokesh shows up again and like reveals that he had a thing for the prince's mother because she was like a strong
Death's
woman.
Chin or something.
Death's Chin. And he's like, "You're so feisty and brave. You remind me of her. You're gonna bear me a son." So he tries to marry her. So she gets kidnapped at the end of the book, which cuts to the 4th book. I'm gonna go super abridged because this is the one that I didn't skim through, and honestly, it's not wholly relevant. So
There's a bunch of
Sure.
happens that is so irrelevant. The only part that's relevant is the beginning and the end, and everything in the middle is absolutely like no reason.
Yeah, there is like one of the cringiest scenes in a book that I've ever read that happens. So the book starts off, they rescue Kelsey. Irrelevant.
There's like a lot of like weird innuendos, kind of non-con between
what year did
her
this
and
fourth book come
Lokesh.
So they save her. They go find, I think the last thing is like a rope of fire.
It's
right?
literally like
Why-
a scene from Aladdin. You know, where like Jasmine comes in and it's like, "I never noticed how handsome you were," and then kisses him and then like distracts so like Aladdin can come. It's literally that.
Wait, I remember. I think I literally thought that as I was
Wait,
reading
so
it too.
Why couldn't she use her powers? Was she like?
I don't know.
Because
why.
Lokesh was more powerful than her.
Of course he was.
She did use the powers, but she used the first part where she was like trying to play like mind games and manipulating him to think that she was on his side and yes, I'll bear you a son. Yes, like.
Yeah.
But then what happens is she's like, "But I need to get married to you because I need this child to be legitimate because I can't let you use me like you're the fiance's mother, right? I can't let you use me like that. Like you did end up marrying her, and I want you to marry me." And he's like, "You're smart. You're cementing your child, your son's position and your status within that." And so they at like the wedding. Right, she's like walking down the aisle with him, and Ren is actually there disguised as the magistrate. And
Wait, is it an Indian wedding or?
no, it's a Chinese wedding for some reason.
Interesting.
We'll get to that. Basically, she sends subtle signals that, hey, like, by the way, I'm just like lying through my teeth. Don't believe me. Very loudly and very theatrically be like, "You lost. Now I've chosen like who I love, and like you can see me kiss him, and like you know like
Meryl
all."
Streep actor is giving.
Exactly. It's giving
giving
Oscar
multiple time
winning.
Oscar
It's giving
winner.
"I never noticed how handsome you are" 16-year-old Jasmine to like 60-year-old
14-year-old or 15-year-old.
16 because it's like on the eve of her 16th birthday.
never mind.
15-year-old Jasmine to like 6-year-old Jafar because this guy is fully 50 Lokesh. And like then she like summons a chocolate cake filled with hot fudge in a room with the magic fruit, with the golden fruit. Opens it, slices it open. It slices open, and all the hot fudge pours on Lokesh.
What a waste! What
a waste! What an absolute waste!
Really, sorry. The worst part of this is that wasting of the cake.
Right?
Oh.
And there's this whole thing. She escapes. Go on.
Yeah, they find the rope of fire.
She goes through like some trials and tribulations, like burns herself like Sati or something, and then like there's a chimera. They like go to some portal, and then there's like a city with 2 lords of light, and then they get the rope from there because they do like basically what an Agni Kai is, but like it's whatever.
I don't-
Like, it's
I
so
just
irrelevant.
don't. There's so much to say. There's so much to
So
say.
then they have to travel back in time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember why they have to travel back in time.
I don't even think they're in
I'm
the same
sure-
timeline at this point.
So they travel back in time. They meet this like resistance leader, right?
Amanika.
Amanika, and she recognizes her instantly because she is the Durga that she's been talking to, this girl. So they give her the objects, and then I think is Lokesh Mahishasura?
Lokesh is Mahishasura.
Yes. So yeah, it turns out Mahishasura, not a real thing. It's just this random horny wizard. And they give this girl the objects, but
All the Durga
all this
treasures.
stuff. She rides Ren as her tiger because, you know, Durga rides on a tiger. And Kelsey is feeling super rejected and alone. She's like, "Oh, I did all this, and for what? It's all for this girl." But turns out only half of it was for her, and the other half is Kelsey's. And she becomes also Durga, and she rides on Kishan. And they go into battle, they defeat Lokesh, and then I think they just live happily ever after, except Kishan stays back, right? He stays with...
He stays back with Amanika to be her, because she's now Durga, right? She is now cemented in this timeline as Durga. She is the goddess, and she needs a mount. She needs a vehicle, and she needs a tiger to ride. And
So
so Kishan stays back to be Durga's tiger. By the way, did we even mention the amulet throughout the entirety of this?
I don't what relevance does it have actually?
It has powers.
Cool. Do they give it to her?
Yes. I think it goes to her, right? Because it's like hers, because it's Damon's amulet. Because Damon is apparently, according to this, we'll get to that, the name of Durga's tiger.
Cool.
There's just so much to unpack.
And then they return back to the original timeline, and Kelsey picks Ren, and I think they get married. They have a baby, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait.
No, they don't have a baby in this
Book,
story.
it's in like the
this
fifth book.
But,
We're
like,
not going to talk about the fifth book because I cannot be bothered to.
Oh
read
yeah,
it.
Amanika and Kisan also like fall
End
in
up
love
together,
and they
yes.
end up together.
That's
Oh,
what
and
happens.
Amanika has a brother, Sunil.
Cool. And then that's how it ends. I do want to shout out. So when I first read this book, I loved it. I had no complaints except for one scene.
Which one?
It was so cringe that I had to skip through it. There's this scene where this old lady comes to talk to Kelsey.
Sachi?
Sachi. I think that might be it. There's this old lady who comes to talk to Kelsey, and they have this heart to heart, and she's like,
give her like fruits, like
yeah, she's like,
sapoya.
I have I'm having this dilemma. I love both of these brothers. Who do I pick? And so this old lady is like, well, okay, well, just like pick, like, who do you really love? Like, just take all the thoughts out of your brain. Who do you love? And she says Ren. And then the disguise drops, and the old lady was actually Kishan
the whole time.
using
the magic, like the divine scarf.
I would implode.
No, they show the scene
I would
where like she looks
kill
at the
myself.
old lady's
I'm
eyes,
so
and they
weak.
like burn amber like Kishan's eye color, and then just like the disguise melts away, and it's Kishan, because you know like Phoebe in Friends where she's like, what do you choose?
Yeah.
December, January, what do you
Yeah.
choose? This or that? Like it's like that thing where Kishan's like just without thought, who do you choose? Who do you like love more? Who do you like spending time more? She says Ren. No hesitation.
And then,
Mind you, this is still when they're dating.
Yeah.
And nothing. He's still.
I think they're engaged.
They're engaged
right?
because he proposes.
And she says
I
yes.
don't feel bad for any of them. They got themselves.
And
in
the best
this
part
situation.
is when he's proposing to her, when Kishan's proposing to her, giving her like this thoughtful speech, like I love you, you're the only person like this, or all of that sort of thing. Like I can really feel like my way around you. All of this, her focus is not on that. She's turned over because they're on a boat, I think, and Ren is getting out of the water.
It's giving Bridgerton from season 2.
Oh!
No, she's getting out of the water, and her eyes are just fused to like his body and his muscles glowing, like wet, and like everything, like his hair, and like he's just sauntering, like looking at her, and like Kisan is just pouring his heart out, and then he just takes out a ring, and then she's like, what? And she just accepts. She's like, oh my goodness, yes, I'm dead.
What did the ring look like?
It was like some lotus, like something.
Who gives a shirt? No, but that scene where the old lady was actually Kishan, I wanted to die. As a child, I want to die. As an adult, I want to commit murder. Disgusting!
But I would have been Kisan.
Lug.
Kisan deserved better, which we'll get to.
did.
Why does Kelsey have powers of lightning and thunder and fire? Because she's Durga. Because in the first book, they mentioned how Durga also has the ability to control lightning and thunder, which is like, where? In what Purana?
Never
in
have
what?
I heard.
Never have I heard.
Maybe I was reading the wrong books.
Yeah, so
The wrong Amar Chitra Katha.
I think we can so that's the summary of the books. Read them if you want to. I don't recommend them, but read them if you want to. So with that, Ani,
And we're off to the races.
we're off to the race. To me, the thing that really kind of signaled to me that something was wrong here is when I started reflecting on the ending. Now, when I first read that ending and Kelsey, I was on her side. I was like, we went through all this just to give these artifacts to some rando?
Yeah, but you think about it. You're like, does she have the right?
Because mind
to be
you,
upset?
Kelsey is 20 max at the end of this book.
Yeah, I
she
mean-
spent 2 years learning about India. Also,
But like,
yeah.
if she learned, she shouldn't have that expectation. And also, I mean, I guess from
'Cause
like,
it's like-
from her age point of view, she still has a little like
Immaturity.
Immaturity.
But it's
But still.
her possessiveness.
Well-
like,
And she
what
still has,
right
like-
does like
Yeah.
Amanika have? And it's like, girl, what right do you
have.
have? It's giving British to India. All of these going to the museums in
No, and,
London.
like, she still has like powers, right? Like,
Yeah, she
does
does.
it
She
not-
does.
Yeah, like
Yeah, but at the time I was like, girl, I'm on your side. And then like when she got the artifacts and became the other Durga, I'm like, oh my god, this was genius. This is a perfect way of like making sure our main character is still incorporated in the story. Cut to like 10 years later, I'm sitting down thinking like, hold up, did this American girl from Oregon just claim to be a goddess that we actively worship?
apparently.
Kelsey
Dear
Devi,
Kelsey.
goddess Kelsey.
No,
You are
criminal.
yeah, no.
Kelsey Devi, Kali Devi, more like apparently according to
You're being sent to Gen Pop
Ma-
right now. I'll let you
Maha
know.
Kelsey.
Disgust. Yeah.
Disgusting.
So
Shad.
let's
Never
talk
have I-
about the audacity.
Let's talk about the
Lion, the
audacity,
witch.
the tiger, the
witch,
wizard, and the
oh,
audacity
audacity
of
of this-
Kelsey
yeah.
Devi. Devi for our non-Indian listeners is the Sanskrit word for goddess or lady. When used in a religious context, it means goddess. When used in a secular context, can be like the equivalent of like lady or
Yeah,
mistress.
and it's also like a general name.
Yeah, it's also a name. You guys probably are from. Maybe you've seen the Netflix show Never Have I Ever. Devi Vishwakumar. The thing is, my problem was when I was reading it, I was first of all, it's not like I was the biggest fan of America to begin with, because other than the fact that they just said that she was Indian, she like literally had no. I'm like, okay, but she's like apparently it's very weird because they say that she's from the kingdom of Kalinga. Interestingly enough, if she was from Kalinga, she should have kept her eye out. Like, you know how they like gotta keep an eye out for Selena? She needed to keep an eye out for Ashoka the Great. Because Ashoka was about to slaughter the people of Kalinga in like the Kalinga War. But that's later. Anyway,
There's
he's a Mauryan
no
emperor.
way Colleen knew that. Continue.
Yeah.
Please, Colleen, tell us. Did you know?
Did you know?
Did you
No,
know?
I'll talk to you about Colleen in a second. Basically, my thing that I was so confused by was that she was not familiar with who Durga was. And like I'm like, how was she not familiar with Durga? Like
She's not like obscure by
Right.
any means.
No.
she's not
I
I need you to understand. The way that they, and I'll get into this a little bit more, the way that they treat a lot of these figures in Indian, I'm not even gonna say mythology because like Hindu canon, they treat them like, I think this is around the time that Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson was getting
it
really
was, yeah.
popular, right? And I feel like they kind of use like characters like Vishnu and Shiva and like Durga and
Yeah,
Parvati and
and the-
Indra, and they like portrayed them as though they were like the equivalents of like just throwing around like Zeus
Yeah.
and Hermes
Like-
and Apollo. And I'm like, I need you to understand that there are actively 1 billion people out there who see these people as like the most divine beings in the universe, right? And the way it's approached is very similar to like how the Greek or Egyptian or like Norse mythology is approached. I'm not really the biggest fan of that because as active practitioners or participants or people who are familiar with this sort of culture and belief system and like way of life, it's like really weird when like a goddess, like a mother goddess.
And that's one of the main things. Hinduism is in fact not a dead religion.
It's very much alive.
It's so
and so
super
like
alive.
treating it like a very obscure religion and then just mentioning here they're like, oh, people still worship them. There's still temples for Durga. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like Durga is probably one of the most worshipped deities.
Hinduism is the third largest religion, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
Right? And the way that they just are like, oh, America doesn't know who Durga is, but Durga is this daughter of like a king or general of the kingdom of Kalinga, right? No, like that's not how that works. And then like Mahishasura is just like some rat. Like there's like they get into the
Yeah.
lore a little bit, but like I didn't really understand like what they were.
I think she picked and chose what she wanted.
That she did, and I'll say this.
She
like,
went shopping.
My thing was I didn't really understand how they approached it because like yes, if you look at it historically, Durga did not achieve as much of her popularity until we get into like the early classical period, which is around like the first millennium CE. But there was still like that mother goddess like Shakti figure that was still like apparent then. So just pretending like Shakti or like the goddess is not at all there during that time like does not really make any sense to me.
So to that point, I know you say you don't remember the third book so much. I think that her approach to this was to pick and choose which stories Colleen picked which stories she felt like fit with her plot. And then in some cases, she straight up changed them. There's this whole plot line in the third book where there's the story of Shiva as the fisherman,
Yes.
where she just invents a side character of Indra joining in on that.
Indra is not even in
He's
that story.
not only is he not in on that, he is famously married and would not be interested in Parvati.
Who is famously also married.
And I don't think she knew or cared, is the thing.
And
I don't think Colleen
he's
knew or
not-
cared.
It's not even part of that story. I didn't like the weird like tension, whatever romantic sexual between her and Kishan, because I know that like has to do later with
They
her
end
being-
up together.
Kelsey thinks in her head like I know the Greek gods like had affairs with mortals, so maybe
We
Durga's
do
in that.
not.
We don't.
We do not do
we
that.
do not, and not with Durga. Durga again. I need to understand that like especially in a living, breathing religion like Hinduism. I understand like with Hinduism, it's seen as like polytheistic, many gods, mythos, like a big canon of stories and that sort of thing. So trying to compare it to like very more organized what we traditionally see as religions like Christianity or Islam or Judaism is like maybe unfamiliar, but you have to understand that at the end of the day, these deities are like, they're not just like sacred in the sense that like the Greeks worship Zeus. I'm talking like these are seen as the highest form of divinity, on par with how Christians see God or Jesus, or like how Muslims view Allah, right? So if you're making light of Durga, who's seen as a mother goddess, who is famously married to Shiva, their relationship is eulogized. She is the mother of 2 children, right? Her role as a wife and mother is eulogized amongst her being the mother of the universe and a warrior and that sort of thing. When you're like, oh, like lightheartedly, she's wearing like a slitted dress and she's showing off her leg and she's talking about how wonderfully gorgeous, like this isn't like the 4th book, I think, how gorgeous her like leg is, and she's like flirting with like Kishan, and I'm like, I need you to understand that is triggering.
I think that my problem with it wasn't necessarily that she was acting like a person. It's the fact that she was a person. It's the fact that you were taking like this religious figure and being
You're like bringing her down
to like the
Because within Hindu canon, the story of Durga is that they describe this in the book too, so I don't understand why they deviated from it. Basically, Mahishasura gets a boon from the creator god Brahma that he cannot be defeated by any god or man, famously omitting women from the people who can't defeat him. And with every single boon that the gods bestow, there's always a loophole, because the gods also have to intervene when they inevitably wreak havoc. So Mahishasura is wreaking havoc. He conquers all of earth and like of the heavens and everything like that, and he's wreaking havoc on all the people. And the gods realize that they like royally fucked up. So they go to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the Trinity, like the Trimurti, the creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe. And they get together, and from their raw power, their raw Shakti, energy, like strength, they fuse that together, and from that emerges like a woman, right? And the gods get together and they bless that woman. They give her all the weapons, all of the power, and she is the embodiment of complete feminine divinity. And she goes and she completely trashes the shit out of Mahishasura.
Wrecks him.
Right? Royally wrecks him. Right? Like, to the point where, like, she famously has a 9-day battle with him for 9 nights. And on the 10th night, which is called Vijaya Dashami, right? She defeats him, destroys him, kills him, takes her trident and just like stabs it into him, right? There's a huge legend, huge story associated with the origin of Durga that is completely it's not even like an obscure, it's completely intertwined with Hindu tradition. And I don't understand why they
But alternatively, what if she's an 18-year-old from Oregon?
Yeah, also why?
Why?
Because
Oregon?
Colleen's from Oregon. That's why.
Oh, right. Didn't she like say something like,
Yeah.
I wanted a main character to blah blah blah?
Yeah.
Also, wait, who was the target audience for this? Is my
YA.
genuine...
It was us.
I don't
little
think this was
Kiko
for
and Faye.
us.
No, it wasn't.
So a little background on Colleen. Thanks to our resident One Piece expert for finding this. Colleen's
Credit.
inspiration for writing this book was another very famous set of 4 books
Twilight?
called Twilight.
No, because okay.
You are no.
No, because if you
you're wrong.
read it,
no, you're
it
not.
reads. I was gonna
No,
say
you're
that
not.
it reads like it.
Yeah.
Kissen is Jacob.
Yeah.
Oh wait, you're
Ren
right.
is Edward.
Yeah.
And Kelsey
Oh.
is Bella.
Bella, because
right?
she's
That's
Mary
literally
Sue.
they, like when I was reading the first 2 books, I was like, oh my goodness, Kissen is literally acting like Jacob. Like, you want me? Like, why are you always with him?
Yeah.
Like,
We were talking
that's-
about Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why,
White.
she's just some bored. Like, I'm not saying
sorry.
Kelsey's boring.
Non-Indian.
Yeah. Thing is,
Interesting.
I just
interesting,
feel like
interesting.
I don't think that there were ill intentions with writing this. Colleen has also said that she has in fact never been to India. And you can tell that from her descriptions of what India sounds like in her writing. She describes it a lot like just the West, but with Indian food or something.
If she was actually interested in Hindu mythology or whatever, or she just wanted a different mythology or different religion.
Maybe she
think
was
it's
like
probably
Rick Riordan's already hit like the others.
Yeah.
Let me like hit another
Yeah.
one. And I'll say
I don't. Yeah.
on the mythology, like the Hindu canon aspect, there's like the biggest problem is with Durga. There was some stuff that I took personal offense with in like the first book when they talked about like Hanuman, and they
Yeah.
talked about Narsimha. She specifically like, I know like this isn't like that
What
big
did
of a
she say
deal,
about
but she
Narsimha?
said like called him like ugly and like a bunch of stuff. Cause like there's a statue of Narsimha in Hampi, right? The story
Yes.
behind it is like actually kind of sad, but we won't talk about it in this podcast. The Narsimha, I need to understand, is an incarnation of Vishnu, who is probably the biggest deal in Hinduism, right? He is like like there's like many sects of Hinduism, but like probably the largest sect of Hinduism are the followers of Vishnu, like his devotees,
yeah.
right? Vaishnavas, right? And Narsimha is one of the major like incarnations of Vishnu, and they get into like the story behind Narsimha, and they're not wrong about it. They just like omit some things, and like the way they talked about him, like, oh, he's ugly, like he looks like hideous.
shouldn't be, like-
and I'm like, Kelsey is like, if I'd rather like I would do whatever for like Ren, but like not for like whatever this Ugra man lion thing is. And I was like, I don't know about that. It's kind of like
Truly wild. That
I think I can kind of understand
audacity.
because like the whole deal with Narasimha is that he's like
Scary, right?
yeah, but scary and ugly are
Ugly
two
is,
different things. You know what? She could have said scary instead of ugly, and
It would have been fine. Yeah.
one thing about the religious aspect, I just think it's kind of. I mean, it's not funny, but that she made like Durga like a person. Like in Hindu, you're in the like sort of ending, your end goal of life in Hinduism is to never be reincarnated again to reach enlightenment, right? Being a human's like the worst thing.
In fact, like so many of the times, like the gods are cursed to be born as human, and they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh my goodness,
curse.
please,
Like, that is
never."
the specific wording. Curse. It's a curse for real.
Right? Because like this Bhulokam or like Earth is like seen as like a place of suffering, right?
Yeah.
And they're not wrong.
And they're not wrong. But culturally, I'm going to be so honest with you. There's 2 aspects in both that Colleen does this thing where she sets my expectations so low that when she like actually gets something right or like something kind of obscure right, I'm like, oh my goodness. And then it just drops down again.
No, it's
because
it's like she picked them from like a fun facts website. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
because like for instance, they mention like very interestingly obscure concepts. Like for instance, in the 3rd book, they mention like how the Trishulam prongs of the trident represent Shiva's role as a creator, preserver, and destroyer. And I was surprised that she got that. And there were like many things that like she talked about. Genuinely, I was very surprised by her just referencing because she was right. But another thing is that like there were 2 things that I had a problem with. One, that a lot of times we would be in India and Kelsey would only be eating American food. She'd be like eating omelets and turkey and mashed potatoes.
There's a part where she straight up says, "I don't really like curry."
And I'm like, she's
bruh.
like Kissen like wishes for like from the golden fruit like curry, and then she's like, oh curry no, and then she ordered like she wishes for like
Criminal
a full,
behavior.
and I'm like, you're what?
Ooh.
Wait, and I'm like,
You don't have to like it, fine, but in this instance of a book, you have to like it. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately.
and I'm so confused because like there was like, especially in the first book, they mentioned like how she kind of like ate Indian food here and there, and they mentioned some stuff, and I was like very surprised about it. But like another thing was that she was very much not eat, and they were like mentioning some stuff about India, like, oh, she drove on the left side of the road, and like she did this and that. But like a lot of times, it just felt like she would just straight up be like, oh, the Indian clothes in my closet were basically American clothes, but they were like brighter Indian colors. And I'm like, what?
Wait. In Eat, Pray, Love, does she go to India or something?
She does.
I feel like it's
she
the
goes
Eat, Pray, Love version of.
She prays. No, but even that was like interestingly somewhat like there. Like in this one,
I haven't read it.
It was basically she was in America. But like GDP dropped and it with the sepia filter.
Yeah. It was,
right. She was eating American food.
There were no cows. Were there cows to be seen?
No,
they mentioned cows once.
They don't talk about
like
everywhere. Like the stray animals. They don't talk about like the traffic.
No, they do. They mentioned once about how she's scared about ever driving in India, which is like I get it.
Wait, okay, that's actually
valid.
That was one of the deep research.
It's not even like a J-Ho aspect of India. It's not even an Eat, Pray, Love aspect of India. It's not even Bride and Prejudice aspect of India. It's just like, it's not even like an Aladdin aspect of India. It's just like let me use my imagination and Google one or two things just to confirm something and just write. Because sis, why was she eating Spanish omelets?
She straight up says, right? Like, Colleen has never been to India. Her approximation of what India is comes from Google.
Her clothes, she wears two Indian things. She wears a sharara.
A what now?
A sharara.
As an Indian person, I have never heard
okay,
of such a thing.
Sharara is actually a thing. It's basically like a kurti top, like a tunic top, and a skirt and a dupatta or like a shawl.
Okay. Yeah,
That's it.
Okay,
and she wears a lehenga.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, she describes a sharara. Right, she's like, I'm wearing, this is like called a sharara, and she describes a lehenga because she says it comes to her midriff, and shararas famously are tunics that come down. So I was like, okay. And the second thing is she's wearing a lehenga in like the second or fourth book, and I'm like, they never mention a sari once.
Where are your normal kurtas? Where are your churidars? Okay,
Nothing.
where
they
is
mention
it?
a sharwani.
Where are
They don't
your
mention
lungas?
kurta. They mention like a tunic. I think they say kurta once. They don't mention a sari once. They don't mention a dhoti once. They don't mention any like actual like Indian clothing. They mention just like wedding like shara. And another thing.
No, you know what she probably did? She probably searched up Indian clothes on Google Images and picked the pretty
first,
like the
exactly.
more like aesthetically Western.
It made no sense.
So here's the other thing that I kind of wanted to touch on. I think weirdly there is also a little bit of whitewashing of Ren and Kishan as well. Because first of all, Ren is often described mostly as like a...
Oh, no, I have an exact...
Oh, yeah. He's got blue eyes, black hair, and gold skin. Like...
Yeah, it's his long-sleeved shirt was untucked and carelessly
Literally,
revealing a smooth, well-built golden brown. That's the description that people want to use for Indians when they don't want to make them look dark.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
glossy black hair was swept away from his face.
I'm fine with all of that. What I'm not fine with is the fact that they emphasize the fact that Dhiren doesn't really have that many Indian features. He has like almond eyes that make him look more Asian. He has blue eyes, which they're like,
those
why do you have blue
orbs.
eyes? Why do you have blue eyes? And then he's like, oh, because my mom is Asian. And I'm like, oh, maybe she's like Persian or something because they have blue eyes or green eyes.
She's Chinese.
She's Chinese.
You're so right. He's tall,
Mongol.
lean, and regal with amazingly vivid, slightly almond.
No, because they specifically say, "Oh, you don't look like other Indian men," and like those nasty Bob the Jean Indian men.
He's also got an aristocratic nose. They
that's not
the pudgy, right? But I like Kishan looks like he's Indian, but he has golden.
Yeah, that's
orbs.
the thing. Gold eyes, like.
Amanika has green eyes.
Kishan color is dark.
What's
bronze.
her face? Yesubai has purple eyes. Why can't any of them just have regular
the purple
eyes?
was wild to me. That's the thing. I think there is a little bit of whitewashing
and
of
Lokesh has black eyes actually. So yay for that.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
Like,
the villain.
The villain.
Described him as being light tan. So you win
so
some,
nobody is dark skinned. I mean, they don't have to be dark skinned, I guess, if they're North Indian, but it doesn't sound like they are.
No, the thing is,
but like anyone they came by, none of them. Oh wait, for Ren, I guess it's understandable. You said his mom was.
But again, but he has blue eyes, my guy, and not only does he have blue eyes.
Where did he get those blue eyes from?
Like in like the more detailed descriptions, like later on, she never once talks about his like Indian style features. Like she mostly describes
his muscular appearance and his eyes.
You're calling him golden brown.
No, I didn't call him.
Yeah, I know. But in the first description, he's golden brown. He's only ever gold afterward. Oh, by the way, speaking of, all the references to Chinese culture
Yeah, where
are
did that come from?
Japanese.
Yeah, kappa. Why were
Are-
kappa Japanese?
Yeah, the Star Festival they're describing.
Japanese.
Japanese.
Wait, so no. My question is, why did she suddenly bring another?
I have no idea.
No,
Because
but
she
I-
wants to make Ren light skinned. That's
But
why.
that's another thing is that the first book had like mainly like Durga, I guess, Kishkinda, Hampi. Those were like Indian references. The last book, the around the end was like I guess mainly Indian. The middle two, the second book, like the third book had some references to like the Shiva Parvati story in Mahabalipuram, and then half of it was Japanese mythology. The first book, Kappas. The second book. There was Norse, there was Roman, like with the Salvare, or like the Norse, like Odin's ravens. Like what was going on?
No, you know what it was. How am I supposed to know? But I feel like other people outside of Hinduism don't really care about Hinduism or like its mythology or anything. I mean, unless it's like yoga and stuff, but that's a whole different thing, right? But you know, like Japanese culture and like whatever religions and their like mythology and stuff, that's more widely known.
But girl,
Norse mythology, people know about that without.
Why was she saying it was Chinese?
How? Yeah, why are you saying it's Chinese? It's
No,
straight
also,
up not.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Or,
name,
like, whatever.
I couldn't
thing
get
it
over
is.
the names. Another thing, the language. Like we talked about the food. We talked about the language. Okay. Sis fully just went to Google Translate because half of it did like it made like I know some basic Hindi, and I was calling my dad who studied Hindi in high school, college. He's fluent, read, write, speak, understand. But I was calling him like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And he was like, I don't know. Cause sis fully would go on Google Translate, type sentence, and it would just translate. They'd be like, मैं तुमसे प्यार है. Maybe it's grammatically correct, but I'm pretty sure it's मैं तुमसे प्यार करता हूँ is the main thing. There were so many times where they would just like, include random bits of Hindi, like here and there. She would call her Sundari, fine. Rajkumari, sure, but like.
Oh yeah, she has like nicknames.
But like there's like Bilauta, like that means kitten. No one says that. Right? No, like I can't with the random pieces of Hindi. It's like she literally went on Google and don't even like that's the Hindi.
Wait, this
the
is Telugu.
Sanskrit was even
Priyatma.
worse because she would like the Sanskrit prophecies. She would write out each individual word. She searched up. She didn't even search up a sentence.
Wow,
because
this
they're
is Malay.
not even connected. They're not even connected.
Wait, I use Google because like I don't know what this word means.
What? Iyadla. Apparently, and I searched this up online. It means beloved
In what language?
in Hindi. And you want to know where I found that?
Where?
On the Tiger's Curse.
No.
I searched it up on so many Google Translates. Nothing.
No.
She's just
but look.
making stuff up. Goddamn.
No, I can't because it was like there was like these notes that apparently Ren took. Which also, by the way, why was he writing them in English Hindi? Like the letters
no idea.
were Roman,
Yeah,
but he was writing them in
Romanized.
Hindi.
It shouldn't make
They were
sense.
just saying a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff, and she was just like the language was used like Sudha. Where were you, sis? Step in.
Sudha
'Cause
does not know
And then
Hindi, bro.
suddenly they would. The thing is, they would be using Shuddh Hindi, like Sanskritized Hindi. So I thought, okay, maybe because they're like princes of like Rajput princes, I guess they're using Sanskritized Hindi. But then they'd be like, मैं तुमसे मोहब्बत करता हूँ. That is Urdu.
They're just multicultural people. What
No,
can we
but
say?
when things can be better said. Why are we using Urdu when it doesn't matter? But then when it could be used well, you're not using it. But like, also canonically in the first book, Ren doesn't know how to read or write English.
Okay,
With-
can we talk about the cringe poetry also?
Yeah, why
Just-
would they just
Oh
randomly
God, no!
introduce-
Don't remember,
Why?
dude. Oh my God, that was so bad. It was
Colleen thought
so
she
bad.
ate with that, honestly.
See, okay. The thing is, Colleen, like, if I was there with her, if we were just there with her, this had potential. But like, Colleen, it's not even like if it was J-Ho India, I could at least understand. It wasn't J-Ho India. It was kind of totally Spies India. I'm gonna be so honest with you.
It's like she tried to make up a fantasy land.
It
to,
was
like,
a fantasy
connect to
land.
her like.
Why was
story.
Alexander the Great like there?
I don't, bro. Okay, taking a step back from like just the appropriation, and let's be real, the white savior trope.
This is, I
right?
think, the evidence. I think this is what cultural appropriation is.
Yes.
Right, because it's not even like I guess maybe minutely appreciation of the culture, but like a lot of it just feels like she just threw the wall and like Googled some stuff, and
like
poor Sudha had to like.
Even taking a step back from that of like okay, like take all the like clearly. It's not clearly offensive because the first time I read it, I was just so happy to get representation. I didn't really care. But reflecting on it, definitely offensive the way that she twists like our actual religion. Again, the savior trope, I do not like that. Maybe she felt uncomfortable writing like an Indian American character who like reconnects with her roots because she's not Indian American. She's just American, right? But even throwing all that out, looking at it from a standpoint of just a book, Kelsey is the most Mary Sue of Mary Sue characters. And it wasn't until I was like skimming through it, so much of the book is every character just being inexplicably in love.
Yeah.
Like what? Ren loves her, Lokesh loves her, and Kishan loves her, and Lee loves her, and Wes loves her, and these like randos in Oregon love her. Like every guy who meets her loves her, and their explanation is always just like, you're so brave and beautiful and nice. They say she's beautiful, but then the part where Ren loses his memories, they're like, you love her, she's beautiful. He's like, she's kind of cute, I guess, but like...
But like, she also describes herself as like plain chestnut brown hair, like very average looking.
The thing is, in the book, she's constantly described, like not even like by other people, just in the descriptions and itself, they just keep saying, all it says over and over, she's gorgeous, she's this, she's described as like
it hugs
a really
her
beautiful
figure, like the Sharara, and I'm like...
Like, if she's on like Mary Sue, she would at least be described as like Bella was described as like average looking. She wasn't. Well, they didn't say she was beautiful or anything, right? Tiger's Curse, she's described as being beautiful.
Yeah, she's not just beautiful. She's so powerful too. Everything just works.
She's got lightning and firebolt powers.
Everything works out for her. Every character loves her. Everyone keeps telling her how special she is. She's literally called like the chosen one at one point.
She is literally called Durga, chosen one.
Yeah.
Why did Durga, who like before I even read the whole like Durga is actually Amarika, like right? With the Hindu gods, there's so much devotional literature about, can you not give me one glance of your form? I beg, I yearn for like all of my like being to see you once. And that exists for Vishnu, that exists for Shiva, and that exists for like the mother goddess Durga as well. There's so much literature. Why did she appear for some random 18-year-old Oregon? Like, Kelsey, I'm dead. She just appears.
Yep.
Why Kelsey?
And they keep calling her brave, right? Mm-hmm. Where? What does she do that's brave? I don't get it.
She takes care of
a tiger,
Ren.
I guess. Whatever.
Like, if for the check, I would do too.
And like, dude, every scene with Ren when they're talking, Miss Ma'am is so insecure. It's like she's trying to convince us, the reader, of why she's important and why we should care about her. Because every single scene is like, Kelsey being insecure, and then Ren explaining to her how like she's changed his life.
It's so ridiculous. I don't get how she's insecure when everyone pursues her.
High key, like literally, she's a self-insert. Like, I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
She's a self-insert for everyone who's not necessarily an Indian American girl, because an Indian American girl would take a completely different approach to this.
Yes.
Right? A hot Indian prince landing in your lap.
But let's talk about Ren a little bit. Mans is so aggressive, and for what?
In the beginning, he's so like soft.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, and then at first I was like, Kishan is kind of an asshole. And then they just swim.
Yeah.
He gets so unnecessarily like angsty, like Ren for no reason.
So but that always happens. But that's not special to just Tiger's Curse though.
But it is poor writing.
Yes.
The love triangle was so exhausting.
It was like we all knew
so
that she was gonna end up with
Ren. Okay, but which one did you prefer, Ren or Kishan?
At the beginning, Ren, and at the end, Kishan.
Yeah.
I
think that was everyone's journey.
I don't know. I didn't.
You know what? No, I preferred Lee.
Honestly, my man Lee.
Yeah. The thing is,
he was a doctor.
Slay.
He was a martial arts champion med student with a loving, like accepting grandparents who was going there buying gifts, opening doors, literally, yeah, sure, bare minimum, he was out there, gentleman, and
Honestly,
also hot too,
and
but
look,
gentleman.
no, you
Lee dodged a bullet.
truly. No, you know what? We don't prefer Lee. We want her.
we want Lee better for
Kelsey
Lee.
can have someone.
She can have-
someone
she can
else.
have
You know
Ren.
what? They deserve each other.
They-
They
yeah.
deserve
They
each other.
deserve
That's
each other.
fine.
Where
no,
does
but the thing with Kishan is that he technically manipulated her. Like he like tricked her and stuff. So like I don't know. They're all toxic with each other.
yeah,
They kind of just need. Where's Yesubai when you need her?
honestly.
Okay, by the way, he's hot and all because they describe him, but when you search up his fan art, a lot of it is just Pinterest boards of Shahid Kapoor.
Wait,
Rip.
you know who would appreciate that?
Dude, not only did they describe how hot he is, they won't shut up about how hot he
They're
is.
constantly talking about how.
Dude, Kelsey is
gorgeous
so
he is.
horny. Like,
But like also everyone else talks about how hot he is too. So
Yeah.
like,
I guess he's
Yeah.
just the hottest.
and I was
Edward-
my expectations were high. I was
It's
expecting
the-
like a hotter version, a younger,
Yeah.
hot version of Hrithik Roshan without the extra fingers.
You're so
bro.
rough for that.
No, it's the Edward Cullen school of zero personality, only hotness, and everybody's in love with your man.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, as we sort of wrap this discussion up, I think Tiger's Curse really falls into a lot of the same YA tropes that kind of get repetitive and boring. I think that the thing that it does pretty well is that there is actually like a story to it. There's like plot and intrigue and like solving
It had
puzzles and adventure.
potential.
It has potential.
It has so much potential.
And like
honestly,
the writing itself,
I feel like
it wasn't.
I
yeah, it
feel
was
like
pretty
it
good.
would have the writing itself was good. The only thing, there's two things that could have like solved this immensely. One, maybe have an Indian American as the protagonist. I don't know if that's like just me thing, but I feel like it would have been so much more meaningful if it was someone who's actually kind of familiar with Indian culture. Two, on the writing team there should have been like a fact check.
Yeah.
6-3, like Indian like canon, like Hindu canon is already so interesting on its own. There's so many layers, like story on story, legend on legend, history on history. There's so much to use. Why are we like
And also,
just
I think it
throwing
would have benefited her to just pick, like, just use material from one like story of Hindu.
Yeah.
or
'Cause with
one
she would like spread
one-
herself thin, like
yeah.
not. She picked from all different.
but it
types of
wasn't even she was spreading herself thin. She was just picking and choosing and modifying to fit her story when there were many stories she could have used to kind of help further her point.
So there's potential there. So as we talk about that, the question I have for you guys is, do you think that you can take Indian mythology or Indian culture to write like these Western style stories? Because like I can think of a couple of like when we're talking, especially the conversation about like about Parvati and Shiva being like famously married, like the thing that pops up to me, you see a lot of the time Western media thinks of Hinduism as like a dead religion and will treat it the same way that it does like you were saying Greek mythology or Norse mythology, et cetera, et
Greek,
cetera.
North,
So-
Norse, Egyptian.
Like the big one I can think of is like supernatural. Yeah, supernatural, basically taking Kali and saying that she had an affair with Gabriel, and then having her,
angel.
yeah, and then having Ganesha being essentially
But that's
a
like
shape-shifting
that's
elephant.
truly like one of the worst things. Like
that
that
yeah,
people.
Who was Ganesha was not even represented by an Indian actor.
no,
Okay.
was not even Indian, was just an elephant, and they were like
So weak.
they not only was so weak that they got instantly destroyed by Lucifer, but also they were like cannibals. Like they ate humans. Like was the whole plot point. Like that to me is one of the grossest, most egregious examples of this thing that I have seen.
Yeah.
But do you think that it can be done well? By not by South Asian creators.
See, okay, that's where I think that's like the issue is that first, the only examples that I have where I think it is sort of done well with some level of accuracy is by South Asian creators. I'm sure there are examples by non-South Asian creators out there that who have also done a good job. It's just that I haven't really seen any because they're not that common, and that might just because of like an audience thing, like because of the fact that at the end of the day, the main people who are going to consume this sort of thing is, I guess, South Asians, because I don't think non-South Asians had that much interest in South Asian culture as much back then. Maybe a little bit more now. But at the end of the day, like, the issue with South Asian culture, and specifically South Asian, like Hinduism specifically, is that people tend to ship it along with the other classical mythology systems when it in itself, as we've spoken, is pretty different from them, especially nowadays, and is also more on par with the current religions of today, considering the fact that it still is a living and thriving and growing religion.
While I wish I could see more like books with Hindu mythology and culture and stuff, I feel like Hinduism, a lot of people, a lot of Hindu people take offense to like, they're really into like specificities, and they you won't see books like, you won't see like fantasy books with like Christianity or like.
Well, but I wonder, because what about Good Omens?
Oh, but
right?
you know what? You're so right.
What's
okay,
Good
the thing
Omens?
is, I think
You've
Hinduism
not heard.
is, like,
Okay, so Good Omens was a book by Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett. They made like the Amazon show, but it's like based on Bible stuff, like Bible.
Yeah, it's
I want
pure
to say
Bible
Bible
lore.
lore, but
Like,
yeah,
it's pure
but it, that
Stories
it's
from the Bible.
yes, like so the main characters are an angel and a demon. The first book is about the return of like the Antichrist and like trying to prevent like a war between heaven and hell. And there were Christians who were angry
But
about
the
it.
And
thing,
even in
that's the
the
thing though, is
Sandman-
that the person who wrote it, at the end of the day, with Western civilization, which is very much ingrained with Christianity, people still have some level of familiarity with Christian concepts.
Yeah,
right?
and like in the Sandman, they also have. It's not like a biblical show, but they have, Abel and Cain, right?
And
Yeah.
there are plenty of
Lucifer, the TV show.
fantasy.
Yeah.
There's
I
plenty
think
of
the thing is
fantasy books that
Christian-
also involve Christianity. They have churches and they talk about like believing in God.
Like
and stuff.
Hinduism is like so different. I think people, it's really hard with Hinduism.
I wonder, like, is it our fault of being too sensitive about this stuff?
I don't
Is
know.
it
I don't
like
think for
sensitivity.
we specifically, I don't think we're.
we're not good representation
Yeah.
in general? But I mean, in general,
Yeah.
like, do you think it's like the fault?
I think the issue is that we both expect the representation that's afforded to belief systems like Greek mythology, but also don't want the treatment they get, right? We don't want that. And honestly, if you ask Hindus, I think we would rather just take non-representation over misrepresentation, which is what we've been a lot.
Yeah, I wonder if then what it is a respect thing, because
We just want respect and we're not afforded it.
we're not afforded it. And when you see like Hindu mythology misrepresented or misinterpreted or
'cause we're
completely
already
changed,
so, like, misunderstood.
yeah, when you take like stories from the Bible and then change them, the original stories are pretty widely known. So that's not going to be someone's only like frame of reference as to what Indian culture is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take something like Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, right? And if that's someone's only frame of reference for a long time of what Kali is, of what Hinduism is, there is no other contradicting information that represents us for what we are. There is no frame of reference for people of this culture to understand our culture and give it the respect it affords.
Yeah, like
So maybe, but then the first step should be to have more representation. So
like
does
would
that
it-
fall on
How
South?
do you feel about like Indian gods appearing in like Marvel? Because in Marvel, I
They
don't know
have
if
Thor
you
and stuff.
watched.
They have Indian
There's like that
gods.
scene where there's like a hall of all the gods. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't think I would like that, because but that falls back into the same of lumping in Hindu gods with dead religions.
Yes. Okay, I guess I'll take that back about Marvel, because you're not going to be seeing like God, like Christianity is God, or
But you're not gonna see, like, the point is you're not gonna see like Jesus
Yeah.
like having like a fist fight with Thor. If
That's
Jesus
fine.
is in there, put Krishna in there, like
Let's
buddy,
go.
like buddy cop.
But you know what's
Buddy
son of-
cop.
Wait,
No, I would love to see
but
like a Jesus
is
Krishna
the
buddy
son
cop.
of
Like,
That would
God.
be so funny.
Jesus is the son of God.
okay,
so
but
wouldn't
okay,
it be God?
okay, like okay. Here's the thing: is that like
Truly
that's when we get into
technicalities.
like Trinitarianism.
Okay.
Like
We don't have time for this.
Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
I
Jesus is the
think
son of God,
then,
but also equally
like, where
God.
do we go from
Yeah.
here? I think maybe, I guess it falls on South Asian creators to make our culture
But
more
it's South
seen.
Asian creators who respect South
Yes.
Asian culture. who
And I
see-
think there's a lot
at
of
the end of the
research to
day,
be done.
like there's
Oh,
this
yeah.
whole perspective of an insider-outsider thing.
Yes.
I want South Asian creators from an insider perspective, as in I am a person who believes in this, who practices it to like a certain extent, or at least sees the sacredness or divinity in it, and we are representing ourselves, and then marketing it to a Western audience who will consume it and be like, oh, this is what this is. If we're relying on people from an outsider's perspective, whether there be South Asians who don't respect it or non-South Asians who also don't really respect it, or even if they respect it, don't really represent it well, then we're gonna get nowhere. Then we're just like complaining about stuff that I guess we at the end of the day, we're the people who are gonna have to represent ourselves. Because if we're waiting on people who could not give less of a shit about our gods to like represent our gods properly, then like what it was like. I mean, the ancient Greeks aren't here to like defend Zeus,
basically,
but we're here to defend Krishna.
Basically, at the end of the day, the conclusion to all this is that we would like books with Hindu mythology, but at the end of the day, it has to be written by people who actually care, and
or at least
the people who actually care will have to be are probably or have to be people who are from the culture and religion.
So on that note, as we close this out, do you guys have any recommendations for, you know, actually good representations of Hindu mythology, culture, Indian culture, etc.?
A lot of the books that I read when I was younger, I did have a good amount of. There was this one trilogy that I read, the Tara trilogy. I forgot who was written by. Anyway, it was called the Tara trilogy, and it was actually about like this one girl named Tara and her brother Suraj, who like kind of like it's like Hindu mythology inspired, and it's actually pretty decently accurate to like because it's written by a South Asian creator, and it's pretty decently accurate to actual like Hindu traditions, Hindu beliefs, and it's written from the perspective of these two children who are Hindu. The issue is that it's definitely more targeted towards a younger audience. It is not for us. But if you're willing to maybe dumb yourself down to like a little bit above Geronimo Stilton Faye Mouse level, then
Magic Treehouse level,
go ahead and give it a read. There's this other series called like The Conch Bearer, which doesn't really delve too much into the mythological aspect, but it definitely does go a little bit into the cultural aspect, and I think it's also like a pretty good book.
Do you have any you want to recommend?
Yeah. So this one it doesn't really draw from Hindu mythology, but I think does draw really well from Indian culture, specifically because it was written by an Indian author. The Phoenix King by Aparna Varma, I think her name is. It's set in a fantasy world, but the kingdom that the main character is like a princess of is Indian inspired. So I think she does a really incredible job of sort of weaving in like it's all like steampunk sci-fi / fantasy.
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
But like so even though they're like traveling around like holopods and they have like little iPad type devices and stuff and like guns and stuff, the main character is almost always wearing a sari or a lehenga. They talk about the traditional wear. They talk about like going into the streets and like the setup is literally like you're walking into like a bazaar in India. The food is described like, so well. It does a really, really good job of being Indian inspired, being respectful, but still like fantasy. There's like a whole thing about Agni, but it's not like related to the god Agni. It's just like taking the name to like show like, oh, it's connected to fire, it's connected to this god, but it's not necessarily like we're not taking this mythos and putting it in here. Here's a brand new mythos. So I think that there's some pacing problems with the book for sure. There's some critiques that I have in terms of just writing, but as a Indian inspired story, it's really well done. And it's for adults. That's purely for adults.
I actually, I'm going to recommend something completely different. And I would recommend, my grandmother gave me, like, comics of, like, in Hindu mythology. Oh. That's what I would recommend. And it's
Amar Chitra Katha.
I don't remember what they're
called. Pictorial stories for children.
Yeah, they're comics. And, like, these small, they're collections of books of the Ramayana. And then Mahabharata had another collection of books. They're written for, like, I guess, kids, but it's not like it doesn't read like it's written for kids. It reads like a comic or a normal storybook. So that's what I would recommend. I mean, they're interesting and stuff. So this is the actual mythology itself and the actual stories. It's not set in a fantasy world or anything. Yes, I second that recommendation. If you want to learn more, I think that's a really great way of doing it. And like the image, they have images obviously. Yeah, beautiful to look at. And maybe we'll like put that in the description too if someone wants to check that out. But I think that kind of wraps it up. Ani, sorry for subjecting you
The Tiger's Curse.
It was definitely something. I have so much more to say, but outside of this podcast.
Excellent. So thank you everybody for listening. You can follow us
on @LessThanADayPod on Instagram and Twitter, and you can email us about requests or just any information you want to send our way. Suggestions, yes, at lessthanadaypod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And we also have a Goodreads and Storygraph if you want to check that out.
So thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.